Hello, welcome to this new episode of Good Grief. In Spanish, it's called El Buen Duelo. Today, our interview is going to be completely in English with a very, very dear friend of mine. We're going to be talking about life, death, and everything in between. He is an avid tattoo collector, a very, very enthusiastic bicycle rider, and an activist for HIV and AIDS. But most of all, he's a friend of mine since I was the age of 13, and we've lived so many different things together. And I'm very happy to have him here, Derek Cooper.
Hello, hello, hello.
It's funny calling you Mr. Derek Cooper.
Mr. Derek Blair Cooper.
Yes, absolutely right. So welcome to Good Grief. I'm really, really happy to have you here. I mean, you haven't been to Panama in 5 years,
5 years,
said?
yeah.
And the reason why you're here is actually pretty much connected to the subject.
Yeah, I essentially had to drop everything on Saturday morning. I found out that my grandmother had passed away. She is my last grandparent that is still around, was still around, and was somebody who helped raise me, who I've been in her house all of these years. Every time I would come back to Panama, she was a very special person, and also had a really long and wonderful full life. She was 101, about to turn 102 in March.
Amazing.
And so that's why I had to drop everything and fly to Panama, which it's for me, like, there's different kinds of grief that I have personally. I think that this one is special because you see it coming from far away, and you understand that it's gonna touch people more deeply in a way that, like, they probably haven't felt it before. I think an example is my brother. He lived with her for 8 years, so he's very close to her. So I came here to Panama to really be here with my family, to be here with my brother and my mom, with an understanding that, like, I felt this before, and in a very acute way that was deeply painful and was a huge break in my life. And this one, for me, has been a blessing because, 101 is a long life. And it's a really beautiful life.
Yeah. Do you want to, tell us a little bit more about that very impactful death that you experienced?
Yeah. So people come into your life, and you just know that they are like a complete soulmate of yours, somebody that you get along with from the moment that you meet them. You see in their eyes that they are kind of an extension of you. They make you be a better person. They help you with your life. So when I was living in New York, about 10 years ago, I met somebody named Tansy, and she was just like a hurricane, a volcano, an earthquake. She came into the room and made you smile. Such a positive person. She had this incredible purple hair.
I remember.
And everybody that she would come around remembered her because of her attitude, and everything that she would do. She would come with such a positive spirit, and I think that that was part of her character. We were born 10 days apart.
Oh, wow.
We were very into astrology together. She was a self-proclaimed moon witch, and her favorite kind of magic was candle magic. So I keep purple candles in my house all the time, that I burn in her honor. But this particular friendship was so close We went to our grad school together. We went to Parsons, and we were in a program called Fashion Studies, and our group was just so close and tight. But she was always the one that was sort of my mirror, somebody who was like the positive to my negative, helped me like learn a lot about myself living in New York. She moved in with me, and I was traveling a lot for work. And one day I was in Brazil for work, and I got a phone call from our other roommate, and saying that Tansy had an accident. I didn't know what that meant, what was happening. It was tough to get in contact with anybody.
Yeah.
She's from England, so her entire family was in England, and it was a little bit of a puzzle about how we were going to figure out how to do everything. And I think something that like we don't think about when people pass is a lot of it is there's a lot of work that needs to be done that isn't emotional or spiritual or internal, but it's like a lot of paperwork. So it's kind of strange. We lived in a lofted building, so our bedrooms were in lofts. Our ceilings were about 14 feet high, so we had lofts that were about 8 feet high.
I'm doing the math of like 3, 6, like pretty high.
Pretty high, yeah. It's but also, it's also not so high that like anything potentially bad. You might hurt your arm, you might break a bone. But do you mind if I tell you this story?
No,
okay.
Go ahead.
The bed, so that bed area, so the second floor of the room, we'd have to climb. All of us would have to climb up to get to that essentially the second story of our rooms. And her bedroom didn't have like a railing. And she was out with her boyfriend at the time. He was there spending the night. She got up to go to the bathroom, and she just fell. And she hit her head on another piece of furniture, and it caused brain bleed, essentially. Completely freak accident. In any other way that she would have fell, it would have resulted in like a bruise, a broken ankle, a finger broken. But it was just in the one way that it happened. She hit her head on the corner of a piece of furniture, and nobody heard her. Nobody heard her fall. My roommate was home. The boyfriend was in the bed, and they had been out on the town a little bit, and I think just had a couple of drinks, and they were very tired. It was late, and so when you find out something like that and you don't have any power over it, I was immediately just like, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. My roommate, who's not a religious person, the other roommate who's not a religious person at all, said, I think like if you do speak to somebody, if you do pray, if there is somebody if there is a God or whatever kind of power there is, I think you should probably, pray or do whatever it is you want to do, because it's not good. And so, when you hear something like that, you don't believe it first. And then for me, I felt like a sort of responsibility in the matter, like I didn't do enough, or like there was something that I could have done. Like and I went through this rabbit hole. I was like, she became my friend. Because she's my friend, because I invited her to live with me, it's all my fault.
Yeah, we go back to find like any
what could we have done?
Yeah.
What? Yeah, sorry. You.
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
what and I just went into like into my, and I was like with a coworker in Brazil, and I was like, how do I get out of here? What can I do? I have these obligations. I have this
Mm.
work that I do that I can't. I it's one of those it was one of those moments where I was like, I cannot do anything in my life. I can't call my mom. I can't call her mom. I can't call my roommate. Uh, I would have wanted to talk to her to see how she was doing. And like at the time we didn't even know if she because she was technically still alive.
Okay.
I didn't know what was happening, so I had to figure out what to do with I laid in bed in a hotel in Brazil, just staring at the ceiling, thinking like, what's the next step? Um, because this person was my whole life. Uh, and I think that the next step was I had to fly back. So luckily enough, I was able to, tell my coworker who she absolutely said, you know what,
Yeah.
you have to go. Um, and I think that it was just a moment where everybody around me knew that it
Yeah.
was like something that they had to like give space and grace, and because I was just absolutely distraught. Um, it's interesting because like you have friends who you've known your entire life, but there's people that you've known
Yeah.
forever from your past life
Yes.
and the next life, in the life after that.
Yeah.
And that was Tansy for me. Um, she's always around every time. Every time I see anything that's purple, there's this beautiful tree outside of my grandmother's
Mm.
house where I'm staying now in Panama, and it's purple, like all of it's flowering right now at this moment in time.
It's probably a jacaranda,
I think
which
I think
is
it is, yeah.
which is yeah.
Which is just, I mean, and those they don't stay for a long
No, no,
time,
no. It's
so it's like
yeah.
this one moment in time, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we just recently got my grandmother's ashes in the house. Um, and let me tell you that getting all of the stuff set up for like the ceremony
Oh.
in la iglesia, it's all, sorry, I'm going
Yeah,
into
it's okay.
Spanish. It's all a mess. It's a mess. And
Yeah.
you have to do these things where you have to, it's so weird. You pay money because you have to take care of like the space that they're in.
Yeah.
And you don't think about death as something that like is something that you need to use money to like continue moving
Yeah.
things forward. Um,
In a
but
moment where you're very distraught
I,
emotionally. It's awful.
it's that. So you have on the one side like these beautiful symbols of other things that remind you of people's lives that are important to you. So my mom, who was very close to Tansy, she said, go get some flowers from the tree. We're gonna put them with your grandmother so that they're together, because they're together
Yeah.
now. And I think you think about all of the people that like Tansy, my grandmother, have touched, and it's just impressive that like you know they are just great human beings that give so much of themselves no matter what. It's those are the people that I'm drawn to. Um I think that like Tansy would is happy now. I think it was we talk with her, so her parents and I and her brother and sister and I are very close.
I know you went to visit them recent. Well, 2 years ago.
Every time every time I go back to Europe, I will go to their house. And something that is a part of my life and a part of Tansy's life is that whenever she could, whenever I can, I go to the ocean, Because it's just a reminder of how big the world is and how unknown things are. And so we would spend every single weekend in the summer together in the ocean. So when she passed, her parents came. That was another mess because actually the space was a crime scene.
Yeah.
So they had like police tape across the door. They took in like my roommate and her boyfriend into the police station to be questioned on whether or not it was like an accident, if they had anything to do with it. And I just remember my roommate Kate being she really had like the brunt of she found her.
Yeah.
She had the brunt of the experience of the moment. And she's like a deeply like emotional person, and I love Kate so much. And I think that at that moment it was just a lot. It was too much. And when they took her in for 8 hours. They kept her in the police station for 8 hours. The ex-boyfriend also 9 hours. Just questioning them on like what happened. How did it happen? What did you hear? Where were you? Were you sleeping? Did you hear anything? Why didn't anybody say anything? Why didn't anybody do anything? And it's sort of like when people question you like that, your sort of morality, your ethics, and they have no like emotional connection to it at all. It gets really tough. So I know that it was really rough for her. And coming and then having to call the family and having them come. They actually, when I got back, we set them up at a hotel that my friend worked at for a couple of days, but they couldn't find an Airbnb. They couldn't find a hotel. They couldn't find anything for something that was so short notice. Living in a part of Brooklyn that was super touristy during a tourist time. And so we just said like, we're gonna open up our house to you. I can stay somewhere else. You stay here. So the whole family stayed actually in our apartment while they were figuring everything out. How to how to deal with the whole situation. And then our other very close friend, who is his name is Colin. He's a Gemini and a professional astrologer. His grandmother set them up with like a funeral home, and everything. But he in the same way that I had with her, was like the other part of the twin that was like so close to her. And together, all of us, we essentially stayed together so that it would make it less hard. But eventually, she was cremated, and her parents wanted half of her ashes to go into the ocean with us in New York, because that was her favorite place. So we went to Coney Island, which is where it's the boardwalk, it's the hot dog eating contest, and all of these like American things, these like very like American things that Tansy was absolutely in love with, like the cheesy, like the roller coaster that's on the beach, and like the cotton candy and all of that. That's like so New York, and so it's just quintessentially like Coney Island. It's like that's like such an American like idea, and she was obsessed with it because it was so cheesy. So we went, and you're technically like not allowed to go into the ocean when there aren't lifeguards on a public beach. So we ended up like, it was really beautiful. We had roses and everything, and we just went out into the ocean. And anybody her mom and her dad are like so special. They were like, we want you to to feel like you're a part of this. So anybody who wants to take some of the ashes and lay her to rest in the ocean, which is where she wanted to be in the end, can do that. And we were just out there, and I dressed in all white.
Yeah.
And I just remember there's this picture of me with the roses that are still in the sand, and I was just out in the ocean staring out, and it was one of the like closest that I've ever felt with her. And then the other half, they took back to England, and so this was in July. Her birthday is in September. And mine is too. Wow. And we're both Virgos. We both have birthdays really close together. So there's a lot of moments in the summertime that like is typically my favorite part of the year. Just being by the ocean and being not having to wear like sweaters and being cold. But the summer is just like a perfect time. But there's moments in the summertime that I have a really hard time with. It's like July, and then even like around my birthday, I feel a sort of weight that's always there a little bit, that always comes back. And yeah, so we take the other. I'm sort of jumping around.
It's okay.
But we took the other half. The parents took the other half of the ashes back to England, and then so 3 months later, we all came for her birthday. We all came to celebrate her birthday at their family home in Kent. And it was like a celebration of her life and like all of the people that loved her. And, throughout the years, we knew each other. It was like a firework. Very short and very hot and very like intense that was our love for each other. And so then in September, we all came. We met all of her friends, all of her family, all the time as they would come through New York to visit. And then they all came for her birthday. So we were all there, all of the friends we met in grad school. And on her birthday, her father got a firework with a purple firework.
Okay.
And they put the rest of her ashes inside of her, and then her brother and sister, sent her up to the moon, which is where her other place that was her favorite. And like the way that for me was like, the way that the moon pulls on the ocean, and the ocean, it plays with the different phases of the moon. I mean, it just was like such a perfect way to say like, we absolutely love you. We know that this is like the right time. And her mom has always been so strong. I don't think I've ever seen her really like break down and cry. And I know that she has.
Yeah.
It's just not in front of other people.
Yeah.
And I think that like she always says like, Tana is always with us. She's always around. I'll find a penny on the floor, and that's her.
Yeah.
And she comes to me in my dreams, and I think like she really helped make a lot of people around her more open to just like energy and spirituality, because I think that like British people can be pretty stern.
Yeah.
And I think people have taken on her life as like a mantra, sort of like a armor. Her sister afterwards dyed her hair purple, part of her hair purple. Something that she would never like done. Super buttoned up, would never have done in the past. But like she was like, you know what? She's asking me to live a bigger life.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way too. I'm outgoing, I'm extroverted, but I can also be like very internal and emotional.
Yeah.
I cried all the time in high school.
Yeah.
Um,
That yearbook
and
picture.
my yearbook picture, super dark, emo, very,
Yeah.
very emotional. And I think like a part of this that has helped me grow as a person is taking her spirit and making sure that I don't like that I don't make light of her life and use that to help other people, to really make people understand that like even though you're no longer here, you still have an impact on people's lives. Um, and I just remember to like my parents live in DC, and she didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, a very like American holiday. You get time off, and she loves Abraham Lincoln as like a
She really liked all the US, like everything. Yeah.
And we went to DC together. We went to the mall, the Washington DC mall, and I took her to the Lincoln Memorial, where he's like 10, 12 feet tall,
Yeah.
sitting on the chair, and then like the Emancipation Proclamation and the I think it's the Gettysburg Address. I don't know.
I mean, you're asking the wrong person, but I've been there.
But she was just like, she was reading it and she was like, just like she started crying because there's something like,
it is a beautiful text. I remember reading it as well. And I think as a non-US citizen, you go to this place and you're like, okay, I'm gonna see what it says, and it's like, wow. I mean, definitely not happening right now, but it's just like, wow, this is written here and people are just acting this way. Yeah. But it's a very beautiful text.
Yeah, and I think like a part of that is just like a feeling of like of that moment, and like even at that time, the text is really beautiful too, but like we think about all of the people who are still oppressed around the world, even though like one part of the world is getting emancipated. I think it's like there's a sentiment there that is like beyond
the time period.
Yeah, beyond the time period, beyond where right now is like a huge moment. And we were there during I know I'm not going to say his name, during the 45th president's term. So we went to the White House, and we just flicked it off. And this was sort of like just she was always with me during the marches after he was elected. We did the Women's March in New York, and I mean that too in the like that whole that part of that spirit still lives on in me. That like you have to say the things that you really mean, and the way that you really feel, and go out there and be with the people who feel the same way that you do. That was a huge part of her life. She was never one to like shrink away from saying anything that wasn't on her mind. That was on her mind. And it was in that moment, in that time, that like she got to know my parents. She also got to experience that like very American holiday, the food. It's funny too because like my mom is Panamanian through and through. She learned all of my grandmother from my dad's side's recipes, like very Jewish American cooking, very 70s. Okay. And like that's what we eat for Thanksgiving. And that's like what American Thanksgiving was for her. And at that time, like my mom fell in love with her too. So like, we talk about these huge breaks in our life. And I think my mom is going through that right now. And I'm glad that I can be here for her. Of course. And I think Tansy went out like a firecracker. She went out in the ocean, and I just sent Tansy's mom, an email saying like, I know my mom told you about my grandmother, but I just wanted you to see the tree and see the flowers, and let you know that she's also still here. She's with me. And I'm always thinking about you, and I hope that everything's okay. And I just, like, with my mother, told her that, like, we're gonna go to Europe. My mom's never been to Paris, so I'm gonna take her. And I was like, we have to go see Tansy's parents
Yeah.
because they became very close as well. Um, and it's just you you can't understand what it feels like until it happens to you.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, oh, you're having a bad day. Like, I'm so, like, I want to be there for you. Like, that's really important for you to understand that, like, this is going to pass.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, I know what it feels like to have the worst day of your life. And every day is, like, getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I remember we had a talk once in New York. Remember? Like I remember that day perfectly. We're having like margaritas somewhere. You had your curly hair. You had cut your hair. You had after you had that long braid, and you were wearing all black. And we had this talk, and I remember just telling you like, "Wow, you've changed, but in like a very very good, positive way, you know." And it was just so special. And I don't know if it was in that moment or at another point. And then again, I kind of second guess myself on my memory sometimes. I remember because my brother's death was also like super abrupt. So when you say, you know what the worst day of your, like you remember that day
Hmm.
vividly, right? It's like a break in your life history. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember you told me, I think it was like, I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say, but like kind of like now I know, right? And I think this is why I want to open up this space because I think it's so important for people to understand that there is no just being there, just saying like, I recognize your pain and I'm here, you know, for a call, a coffee, a sit, or just energy, like
Hmm.
send me energy. Like a
Hmm.
friend messaged me today. She's had a very, hard time and she's going through a really hard, grief and like I have a really busy day today. So I feel horrible. I'm like, how can I'm not there for you today. And she's like I told her I can't come right now. She's like, just send me energy,
Hmm.
just knowing that you have someone out there understanding how you're feeling and just sending you love is so valuable. And I really hope people just take that from this conversation. And thank you so much for everything you've shared. And I really love what you talk about the ocean. Like Chris is also in the ocean. We also did this beautiful ceremony, and for me that's why I love freediving so much in a way because I'm down there and it's just like he's hugging me, and
Hmm.
he's there, and it brings him so much closer to me. And other friends that have passed away were also very in sync with the ocean. So like the ocean's just this thing, but I definitely agree with what you said about how big it is and how small our problem seems
Hmm.
sometimes when we go to it. And it's such a beautiful place to be and reminder to have because sometimes we say all this because we're talking about it now, but in our day to day, there's moments where we just like lose our shit over something so simple. And then it's kind of like it brings you back and be like, oh, right, I don't have to be so upset over that little thing. Like it's really, really doesn't matter. And I think those are some of the things that going through grief and death teach you, to be like, does this really matter that much?
Hmm.
Maybe it's okay if I can just let it go and we just hold less grudges.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are similar in that way that we are
See,
cascarrabias.
yesterday I answered something and he just goes like, "Oh, same Maria," and answering like that, and I was like, "Oh, I guess okay." Then I've been like this my whole life. It's not just now.
But I remember too when it happened. I think one of the most important things that anyone told me, I can't remember the quote exactly, but you sent me a quote that you said helped you,
Yeah,
and it was about a sailboat and the horizon.
yeah,
And it was like about changing your perspective on the world, essentially,
yeah,
right? I'll have to find it, and you can like put it in the
yeah.
notes. But
It's Bishop Brent who wrote it, and it's "What Is Dying" is the title.
yeah, and I think that like a lot of people, I think grief for everyone is different. It's not going to be the same thing for me as it is for anybody
Yeah,
else. And I think sometimes it's really hard for other people to like engage or try and get into um like what you're thinking or how you're thinking. So a lot of people don't try not to engage or
yeah,
try not to like uh interrupt what you're thinking about or like talk to you about it, and they want to sort of like talk about something else and move on. But for me, I think it's super important to talk about, because it's never not going to be there for all people. Like it's a part of life is death.
Yeah.
And I think when you were like, I'm here, I don't have to do anything, I don't have to say anything, but here's this thing that helped me. I think that was really really important for me to hear, because a lot of people, and everybody is really well meaning. They say like,
be strong.
Be strong. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think a lot of times I think like, whatever it is that you need, you tell me and I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
I think for me that's my approach now, because you essentially and I think that can be hard for some people too, because they're like, oh, I don't know what I need right now, right? But then it's like for me, I'm always like, can I bring you food? Do you need a place to stay? Do you need, a hug? Do you need just to talk about anything? I think finding the right thing for people is really helpful, because like I said, people grieve in different ways, and I think it's important, not and it's valid too to keep it in, but I think it's hard. It's hard to do things by yourself. It's hard to do things alone. And I think that's also something that like Tansy brought community together around her to say like, we're here together. We mean more together than we do by ourselves. And I think if communities can grieve together, it becomes more than just one person, more than just the way that you feel, but how can you get to a place of understanding with yourself, with other people. And it's wild. I think back now, and it's almost 7 years, it is 7 years.
I thought it was longer.
No, yeah. So it was July of 2017.
Okay.
So yeah. It's gonna be 7 years now that it happened, and she's everywhere in my life, in my apartment. Her things I still own. I still, there's pieces of clothing that I gave to her that I now have, that are mine, that I still wear. Her, like, I have all of her, like, I even have her like social security card, like, because her parents didn't want to take it, like they don't want to take anything back with them other than her, and other things that were like very important to them. Small pieces. They were like, we have everything we need, right? And for me, I was like, I don't ever want to forget her. So, I have a little hand mirror that says, "Smile, Tansy, you are loved," and I keep that on my desk that I sit at every day. And it's just a reminder that like, no matter how alone you feel, like, at least know that you are loved. Because I think when people feel alone, it can be tough to get out of that, and tough to tell people that you feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it's a reminder that like, even when I feel like terrible, even if I'm thinking about her, or whatever it is, if my job is making me feel super sad and depressed, if events around the world are making me feel sad, like, you're still like, you can get so close to like actual death or like dying, that you just have to remember that like, you are loved. And I think that's an important message that I keep on a little compact mirror that flips open. I think like, there's that scene in Harry Potter where like they open the mirror and they can see somebody behind them. I think that like one day, I'm always like, oh, she's behind me. Like, she's there. And I don't know, there's something about a mirror that like, you looking at yourself, but like, it's an object that was hers and meant a lot to her. So it's just like, it's like thinking about how people stay inside of you and like become a part of you, and help you change. And not everybody helps you change for the better, but I think a lot of people do, even if it's not a good situation. Like I think they'll make you think about the world in a different way.
Lessons.
Yeah, blessings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about the candles, and I think it's a very universal thing. I think fire and candles and having them. And I remember, well, I know my granddad has a candle, and he would light it for my great grandmother, and then now he lights it obviously for my brother as well. And like last year I was so proud, and like I was so happy because it's like a furniture thing where I put my shoes in. Then on top it's like a repisa. And then I have a picture, and last year I printed out a picture, and it's my brother, my friend Claire, my friend Shaka, and then Philip, my dog. And it's a quote from a book that I loved, and it said, "No es la muerte la que disuelve el amor." So it's not death that dissolves love. And then I have, a candle, and just items that I've picked up, a little skull from the Day of the Dead in Mexico, and a Buddha from Bali, and like just having that little space. And even when I'm running through my day and going to the bathroom, like I see it every day, and I can turn on that candle, and even if it's for a few minutes of just lighting it and just thinking about the life that they had, and like that candle still lit in so many lives that they touched. And I think it's really special, and I know it is like universally to have, and the importance of having these things. Some people will just rather like shut it away, or like never. There's people that like take down every picture and they never see their name again, and it's very painful and sad to see that that's how someone's going to deal with it. And I always think, I hope they find a different way. But yeah, the candles I think is beautiful. And I'll next time I'll buy a purple candle instead of a white one.
Yeah.
For sure. I'd love that.
I mean, I would love that too. I think just the color is constantly like a reminder of her life. I think that like every time I see somebody with a purple bottle, I'm like, that's wild. That's Tansy. Like she's here. Another like important piece of something that like I cherish, and I don't think I've really told many people, but we shared a really wonderful relationship with our friend Rachel, who is also a tattoo artist, and she's the only person that I've ever had matching tattoos with. Because of our relationship, we had the same 2 tattoos in the same place, and I that for me, like that story that I have, whether or not like I even care about what those tattoos, the meaning of the tattoo is, it's that moment of getting those tattoos with her, of experiencing going through pain, to have something that's going to be there permanently as long as you're alive, right? And I for me that's so powerful, because I know that like that she's always there in a physical, in ink that's never going to leave me. And to me that's so important. You said at the beginning I'm a collector of tattoos, and I think it's beyond the the sort of aesthetic of it. It's like, how did you get to that moment in your life? And I think about a lot how there are like the way that the indigenous people think about tattooing as marked moments in your life, and you have to cross a threshold of pain in order to get to the next part of your life. And when they tattoo you, that tattoo, it's not just the visual mark, but it's the pain and the reminder of the pain that marks your next part of your life. And so every time I get a tattoo, I think about that. And I, with those specific tattoos that I had with her, that's the marking of her time here with me, and how I know that like I'll forever be grateful for her. And I think that to me is like super special, and something that I can't share with anybody else.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing Tansy's story. And having this conversation has been very, very special to have with you, and I can't wait to like stand up and give you a big hug. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we really hope that this, conversation, this talk just makes you think about someone you love and reminds you that you're not alone, you're never alone, that you are loved, and that your light, will continue even after we're here. So thank you so much, Derek.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll be in the next episode. Bye bye.